Hi there, today is August 2nd, and if you're watching this video, first of all, my congratulations, and congratulations from the Badge Development Committee of Dean College, because this means you've earned not just your first badge, but your second badge, placing you at what I will best estimate as an intermediate level of your learning the basics of Excel. Now starting the third and at least for now the final stage of our badging program, I think we can comfortably call this an introduction to the more advanced operations, functions, and tasks that you can command Excel to perform for you. Okay, once you've gained a little bit of fluency and a bunch of practice. Obviously, we always want to make sure we get our practice. I'm going to start this badge series by addressing a couple of advanced functions, and one student in particular, named Nicole, who was the first person to earn her badge number 1 with us at the college, said, "Professor, when you get to your more advanced operations, don't forget to put in VLOOKUP." Now, we've already seen that there are hundreds, I dare say hundreds of functions. I only use a couple of dozen myself, but there are hundreds of functions that Excel provides to you. And when you start combining them, you can nest them together. There actually are hundreds and hundreds more, okay? So I can't cover every single one of them. So what I'm going to do is try to pick the ones that I find to be the most relevant in the classroom, okay? And certainly the ones that I've found to be most useful to me as a former manufacturer, as a business person, okay? So I'm going to use VLOOKUP, okay? Now, I'll remind you that when you want to use a formula, or look at the formulas that are available to you, go up into this green area in my bar at the very top of Excel, and you're going to see from your third icon over to your, let me see, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, your 11th icon, from left to right, in your ribbon. Those are all different formulas, okay? Now, those formulas can be financial, they can be based on logic, they can be text and characters, they can be time. Okay, we're going to use a lookup function, and this is all to get us thinking in terms of looking up items in relatively large databases. For a more sophisticated approach, we'll take a couple of lectures from now. Again, this one is called VLOOKUP, and you can see that the little blue one over here, it's about the 6th icon in regarding formulas, has to do with lookup and reference. That's the one we're going to use, okay? So I remind you that if you know what the formula is, in this case VLOOKUP, you can start typing it right away, and Excel will start walking you through it, okay? Or you can open up something that we call a formula manager, I believe it's called. I'll double check the name for you in a little bit. We old-timers call it a manager, but it's basically a drop-down that once you start telling Excel what it is you're trying to do, it's going to give you a couple of hints. Okay, we'll get to that in a moment. Now, the first thing that I want to spend time with you on before we get into VLOOKUP itself are what we call arguments, okay? That's a fancy way of saying conditions, okay? The people who wrote Excel wanted to give you a lot of power, but that means you've got to give them information before you can use those commands to provide the power that they've promised you. Now, you already know what they are, so let's take a quick review using, as you can see up here, SUM, S-U-M, as an example, okay? Now, I'm going to go back to home for a moment, to the ribbon we're more familiar with, and I'm going to come down here. Now, look here at, what cell is that, A54? When we use the SUM function, you defined it in this form that you see here in red. You use the word SUM to tell Excel, I want to take a total of a certain number of items. I want you to add them all up and give me the total, okay? So Excel says, okay, but you have to tell me what it is you want to sum. Give me values, cell locations, or give me a whole range, and I'll add everything in that range up for you. Those conditions, the numbers in that range, are called the arguments, okay? So the way you would tell Excel that you want to sum up some numbers is by telling it sum, the command, and then in parentheses, listing your arguments, the numbers that you want Excel to perform that sum operation upon, okay? So if you look at the actual formula for summing, you're going to see that it's a list of numbers. I've got some numbers down here. So right here in column F, I'm just picking any column here, we learned a couple of ways to sum already. You can just add the numbers up. In this case, let's add these three numbers up down here. We'll do something with this table of numbers afterwards, but I'm just going to grab those three values. They are located, located in cell locations E70, E71, and E72. I want to add those three up and put the result right there. As we've already learned, I can enter those three values, plus E71 plus E72. Okay, I can do it that way. I can use a formula. I'm going to type in an equal sign or a plus sign would work. I type in the word sum, a parens. Now look right underneath that cell already. The formula assistant, if you will, is telling you this is the form that your arguments have to take. Sum, parens, a number, another number. Okay, let's try it. Let's type in E70. I can type E70 or I can point and click with my cursor in the left button. Okay, I put a comma in between all my arguments. The second number, comma, third number. I can do this over and over and over again if I want to add a bunch of numbers. You can see this is getting tedious. Don't worry, we'll take a shortcut after. We already know what it is. This is a refresher. I close my parens, I hit enter, and there's my sum once again. This time look at the contents up here, right below the ribbon. You can see in that formula bar exactly what is contained in location F57. Okay? All right, I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to show you that we could use a range. I don't want to keep entering value after value, comma after comma. If I've got a lot of numbers, that's going to get very tedious and, more importantly, friends, very inefficient. Remember, in business, we must be efficient. We're going to use shortcuts as long as we're not sacrificing quality or accuracy. Shortcuts are our friend in business. I'm going to say equal sign sum, parens. Now this time I'm going to ask for the same three values to be summed, but I'm going to highlight them all at once as a range, not as individual cell locations separated by commas. So this time I'm going to put my cursor on E70, and when I click on the left mouse button, I'm going to hold it. And I'm going to highlight my range. I release the mouse button, and it's given me a range. E70, the colon means through, E72, and everything in between. 3 numbers, it's not much. If that was 33 numbers, if it was 300 numbers, okay, now that would make more of a difference in efficiency. And it might place your accuracy at risk to do otherwise as well. So I'm being efficient and accurate here. I close my parens, hit enter, and there's my sum once again. Last but not least, up here in the ribbon on the far right, almost to the extreme right, you remember that little sigma sign that we've used so many times already in our first 2 badges and our first few dozen video lectures. That means sum, auto sum. So if I click on that, left mouse click, all right, it knows that I'm looking for the sum function, so it gave me a shortcut way to do it. Now, once again, I come down here to cells E70 through E72, left click, hold, drag, release the mouse button, okay, and I can close parens, or I can just hit enter at this point. There it is. Okay, so what have I done? I've re-illustrated to you what it means to use a formula and to give that formula arguments, operating conditions to follow in order to do what that formula is supposed to do for you. The arguments, the conditions in sum, are pretty simple and straightforward. Okay, so now that we've refreshed our memories about what arguments are in an Excel sense, or in an IT sense, you might as well say, I'm going to spend a little time getting back to VLOOKUP. Now, what does the V mean? V stands, ladies and gentlemen, for vertical. We are going to look things up vertically in columns. No, what if you prefer to use rows? It's a little harder to see rows when you use Excel because they, as you can see up here, can go way off screen so much more quickly than a column value, okay? But there is one for rows too. It's called HLOOKUP. It makes sense. Horizontal lookup, right? Okay, we're going to deal with VLOOKUP and do things vertically. And I'll be honest with you, I've never seen HLOOKUP used at all in business or in the classroom. VLOOKUP is the one that's used quite a bit. The woman who suggested that I use VLOOKUP as an excellent and useful example, by the way, is currently interning with the Boston Ballet Company, and she uses VLOOKUP in the ballet company's database quite often. So, Nicole, I send you my thanks. Okay, so now when you look something up, you're going to look it up in a group of data or a table, okay? I cheated a little bit and showed it to you already. I put together this information from like a little customer journal to whom, all people to whom we make sales, okay? And there are only about 25 values there, but there could be 2,500 values there. So just looking something up in those cells, that's not hard at all. You can do that on a glance. If you have to scan 2,500 cells, again, it's tedious, it's inefficient, and you run the risk of missing something. You could read right by it. I don't know about you, but I miss things all the time when I'm looking for something in a large block of numbers. So we're going to let VLOOKUP do all the heavy lifting for us, as we like to say. Now, in that little table, when you give a complicated command like VLOOKUP, usually you have to tell VLOOKUP or the other command a couple of pieces of information. With some, we just had to give it the numbers we wanted it to add, whether it be individual numbers, cells, a range of cells, a block of cells, whatever. Okay, with VLOOKUP, you're going to have to tell this, let's call it a hunting mechanism. It's going to go on a hunt for you, okay? You've got to give it three pieces of information, friends. As you can see here, you have to tell Excel, VLOOKUP, what to look for, where to look for it, and what to do when you find it, okay? So, now look right here on line 14. That looks like a very complicated formula, doesn't it? Don't let Excel fool you, okay? It can look complicated, but you can reduce it right down to a couple of simple pieces of logic. Now, if you'll count your commas there, friends, you'll see 3 of them. That means they separate 4 different arguments. The one on the end we'll save for last because that one's optional. So there really are only 3 things. You can see here, they are lookup value, table array, and column index number. That's all one term, column index number. Okay? 3 different arguments. What do they represent? Look above. Those 3 arguments tell VLOOKUP what to look for, where to look for it, and what to do when you find it. Okay? So, having said that, that's how we're going to phrase a VLOOKUP command, or a formula, to use the parlance of Excel. Okay, we'll speak XLEs here. Okay, now what I did is I took a little time and drew you out a roadmap before we go trying some of these things. But I want to bring you down here to this green area, and I want to give you an early warning. Does this sound complicated? Don't let it, okay? Like anything in Excel, the more you practice with it, the more you experiment with it, the more it's going to strike you as to its simplicity, and better, its usefulness. It will click. You have to trust me on that. So I took all of these arguments and I gave them a really quick definition for you, and then the practicing will begin. First of all, VLOOKUP itself is the command. Whenever you type in a function, a formula, a complicated one, you're going to have to start with the command. Before it was =sum. This time, it's going to be =VLOOKUP. Please remember that you have to start with an equal sign or a plus when you enter a formula or a value in a cell. And this is no exception. Okay, so you're going to type in VLOOKUP. That's the command. Now, anything that follows inside the parens is going to be called an argument. All right? It is possible that you could find a formula that does not require an argument. I certainly can't think of one off the top of my head. Very good. Now, inside the parens, our arguments. Concentrate on the first 3 and save ranged lookup for later. Now, lookup value is the first one. Keep these 3 things up here in mind. What to look for, where to look for it, and what to do when you find it. Okay? Lookup value is going to be in the first column of the range you'll give it. we're going to have to provide a range. That's going to be our way of saying to VLOOKUP, go look for it here. Okay, you're going to restrict that area where VLOOKUP has to go and do its dirty work for you. So, what I want you to remember to do, and remember there are always exceptions, please friends, as a matter of discipline, whenever you're using VLOOKUP, when you define the range, the playground where VLOOKUP is going to go do its searching, you want to make the leftmost column, okay, the place where it searches, and you want to sort that column. You remember, you can sort by alphabetic value, by numeric value, but that first column, you want to sort it. Now, there are some instances where you can use VLOOKUP and you don't have to necessarily sort, but more often than not, you have to, you must. Therefore, in my mind, you should do it. It becomes a discipline. So, what you're going to do is you're going to say, okay, I have to go look something up. I have to go look up a certain bill number. I have to go look up a certain customer name. Right? That is what the lookup value is. Number one up at the top there, what to look for. Very good. Now remember, whatever you're looking up, it can be a number, it can be a cell reference, it can be a text value like someone's name, alphabetic. But it is what VLOOKUP is going to go looking for. All right, the second argument I've put here is number 3, because I included the command itself. Okay, the second argument is called table array. Okay, we follow lookup value with a comma, and then we put in the table array. That is the area that you're going to be drawing the data from after you've done a successful search in that area. You've just told it where to go look for it. It's going to be a group of data, a couple of columns, many, many, many columns, or just 2 columns. But again, we're going to look for something in the leftmost column of a big range. That big range is the table array, and I'll give you a demonstration, no worries, in just a few minutes. Okay, put a comma after that. Then we have our third argument, column index number, and that is the column in the table array that you chose in the second step that contains the value that you want returned to you. So, let's look at our 3 arguments. What to look for, or you can look at these right here. Either way, it means the same thing. You're going to say, go look for this. Number 2, go look for it in this range. And number 3, when you find it, grab some other value out of that range that corresponds to that object and bring it to me. Okay? VLOOKUP. All right, so, all right, that's how it works. And I will demonstrate that for you momentarily. Actually, in my next video lecture, I'm laying out the rules now, and then I'll give you a little demo. Now, in the remaining time in this video, let's look at the 4th argument, the 5th item I've identified for you here. You can leave this item, range lookup, off entirely if you wish. All right. Now, that's going to be a value of either true or false that you fill in there. If you don't put anything in there, because it is an optional command, Excel is going to assume that you mean true. Okay? So you're either going to leave it blank, or you're going to type true, or you're going to type false. Those are your 2 choices. Anything else will register as an error. What does it do for you? Well, I'll tell you what. When you have a big, big, big range of data in a list, say it's a list of customer names or vendor names or employee names, there's always a chance you're going to misspell something. If you type my name 1,000 times, as simple as my name is, how many ways can you misspell Adams, A-D-A-M-S? I had one secretary once who constantly misspelled it. So if a lot of people are entering data, or if one person is a little fatigued and they're entering your name for the 15th time, they might leave the S off, or they might spell it with 2 Ds, like the famous movie. Whatever, the point is, true is going to say, of everything I just told you to do, close is good enough. In other words, if it sees Adams, that's going to be a hit. It's going to be successful. If it sees ADDAMS, and I put a true condition, it's going to say, huh? It's like horseshoes and hand grenades. Close is good enough. It will find it anyway, and it will be forgiving of spelling errors unless they're very blatant spelling errors. Okay, now what if I want an exact match? What if I know I'll never make any spelling errors? What if I have two different atoms, one with one A and one with, one with one D and one with two Ds? I want an exact match. Then I would type false as my range lookup. In other words, it's got to be exact or don't bother. Okay, so that's what that last condition means. And please remember, if you don't put anything there for that last argument, it's going to assume that close is good enough, and it will assume a true value. So now we have defined everything in this VLOOKUP formula. So if you want to look something up, you type an equal sign VLOOKUP. Okay? Open parens. You'll enter the lookup value, the object you're looking for, that's going to say my search is successful so far. Number two, you're going to enter the table array where to go look for that lookup value in the first place. Number three, what value to return to you once it does find that lookup value in that table array. All right? And then you can play with the range lookup to your heart's content later. And whatever cell you typed that command in, here, 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 or here, wherever you typed that VLOOKUP command, that is where you're going to see the value being returned to you that you wanted in the first place. Okay? That, friends, is a quick summary of the very useful VLOOKUP formula. When we come back in file number 2 under badge 3, my second video, we'll take a look at some demonstrations and how to use it. Stand by, I'll be back to you again soon.